Hello everybody and welcome to my booktube. I am so excited to launch this channel because I am really passionate about reading and talking about books. I have always loved long form content. Honestly, my heart has always belonged to YouTube, and I am just so excited to have an outlet to yap about books with you all. So hopefully you will join me in this adventure. I wanted to kick this off by doing the 2025 book tag because it is now 2026, but I thought it would be a good way for me to talk about some of the books I read in 2025 without going through every single one, because that would be a little bit too much. So that is what we are doing today. The first prompt is most disappointing read of the year, and I interpret this as a book I went into with high expectations and it did not meet those expectations. For me, that is Part of Your World by Abby Jimenez. I know this might come as a surprise to some of you. I've heard nothing but good things about really all of Abby Jimenez's books and writing, at least within this series. This is part of like an interconnected series. So I started with this one before moving on to some of her others, and I will still read some of her others, but this one just kind of missed the mark for me. I didn't love all of the toxic characters. I didn't feel connected to any of the characters, and overall it was just not very memorable romance for me. I remember that the female main character is like a big city girl and the guy is like a small town farmer type. So that is really all I remember. And there were more negatives than positives for me, so I only ended up rating this one 2 stars. The next prompt is an underhyped book you read this year, and I'll be honest with you, I read so many hyped books. I get a lot of my recommendations from Book Talk and YouTube. So this was a hard one to choose, but I went with one that I feel like not as many people are talking about anymore. I feel like it was pretty popular when it first came out, but at the moment I haven't really heard much about it, and that is Our Infinite Fates by Laura Steven. This one is a fated mates in every lifetime story done absolutely right, in my opinion. I absolutely fell in love with the journey this took me on around the whole world, and I honestly wasn't expecting the ending. I didn't know how it was going to wrap up, and I couldn't have guessed how that was going to happen. So it was a really pleasant surprise. Next is an overhyped book, and again, I read a lot of hyped books, but I went with one that I've heard so many good things about, but I did not really like at all, and that is The Inheritance Games by Jennifer Lynn Barnes. Here's the thing, this reads very young and it is a YA book, so I think that is part of the issue for me. The other is just that I felt like it was a lot of build up for little to no payoff in the end, and I didn't really care too much about the characters. I have also read the second book in this series and I liked it even less than this one, so I just think it's not for me. The next prompt is a book you loved in the moment but don't think about now. For me, that is Summer Romance by Annabelle Monaghan. I love her writing style. I actually annotated this book because there were a lot of quotes that I loved, and so while I was reading it, it was a very enjoyable experience. However, I just feel like the couple in here was not very memorable. Nothing about the romance gave me life like some others do, and I feel like while the quotes are beautiful, they could be taken out of context of this story specifically with these characters, and they would be just as impactful in another, if that makes sense. Next prompt is for favorite book couple of the year, and I have to give it up to a couple that I'm already familiar with. This was actually a reread, and it was Fourth Wing that I reread in the beginning of this year before Onyx Storm came out. Of course, Xaden and Violet are just permanently ingrained in my brain. Like, I could never not think of them as one of my favorite book couples. The next prompt is favorite main character, and I'm gonna give it to Lucy from First Time Caller by B.K. Borison. I found her to be such a lovable main character. She is strong yet vulnerable. She works in a male-dominated field as a mechanic, and she's funny. I just loved her so much, and I just think she is that girl. This next one is a book you can't stop recommending, and I've got to give it up to One Golden Summer by Carly Fortune. This is a 5-star read for me. I didn't have that many 5-star reads this year, but this was one of them, and I just thought this was so perfectly executed. I loved the writing. I related to the female main character in here, Alice, and I loved the way that their relationship developed. Charlie's acts of service were absolutely incredible, and acts of service is my love language. So maybe I'm biased, but you gotta read this. Obviously, it is best read in like the spring and summer months, but get this one on your TBR if it's not already. Next is a book that surprised you, and I'm going with Wisteria by Adeline Grace. This could also fall under the category of favorite book couples. Aris and Blythe were everything. Their banter and tension was so good. I listened to this one on audiobook, and this is the 3rd book of the Belladonna series, which is a young adult gothic fantasy series, but it is just so well done. The atmosphere in this book and the magic that was used just painted such a magical picture. It was so great. I don't even know how to properly describe, but I was surprised because I'll be honest, I just feel like in general there is a epidemic, is that the word, of later books and series not being as good as the first book of that series, and that is not the case with this. This was the best book of the trilogy, in my opinion. Next one is new favorite author, and this was also a hard one for me to think of an answer for because there wasn't an author that I discovered this year that I read multiple books from. However, there is one author that I have multiple books from already, and I read one of them. Of course, it's one that I don't physically own, which is Firefly Lane by Kristen Hanna, and I read it on my Kindle this year. I feel like that is another book that I will just remember forever. The characters, you just can't forget them. You go on the journey of growing up with them in that book, and everything that they go through is just insane. Plus, I've watched the show now that I'm almost done with. I haven't finished it quite yet, but again, just permanently living inside of my head. So for that reason, I feel like she is an author that I am really excited to read more from. I have The Women, I have The Nightingale, and I think I also have The Great Alone maybe, so definitely want to get to those sooner rather than later. The next prompt is saddest reads of the year, and I have to say sad books are my favorite books. But there are two that I specifically remember crying in, and especially at the end of, that hit me hard. The first is A Million Junes by Emily Henry. This is her young adult magical realism romance, and I'm getting into her backlist now because I've read all of her contemporary romances and I absolutely love her writing. This one was no different. I loved the writing, and it definitely has a different vibe than her contemporary romances, but again, it is a different genre, so I would say go in with those expectations. But the end of this just made me absolutely sob. It did. I remember it was like late at night. My husband was sleeping next to me, and I was sat in bed just crying, wiping my tears. But I love it. And the other one, of course, which is just devastating the whole way through, honestly, like you cannot catch a break if you read this book. It is Sunrise on the Reaping by Suzanne Collins, following Hamish's story, and everything the poor man suffered through is insane. Absolutely insane, and honestly criminal for Suzanne to put us all through it with him. Next question is favorite book cover, and I'm going with Promise Me Sunshine by Cara Bastone. I don't know if this is supposed to be a sunrise or a sunset, but I'm picturing it as a sunset, and sunsets are like my favorite thing in the world. I actually have one tattooed on my ankle because I love them that much, and they just make me feel so grateful and happy to be alive. So this cover is gorgeous, and it's done in a way where it looks like a watercolor painting, so just stunning. Next is best audiobook, and I just could not give it to any other book except for Project Hail Mary by Andy Weir. I cannot imagine physically reading this book, to be honest with you, just because of the specific elements in this that are brought to life through the audio version. I'm trying not to spoil anything in case you have not listened to it yet, read it yet, but just highly recommend the audiobook. The narrator did the best job. Again, like there could not have been a better narrator. Next is the longest book you read, and I read a longer book than the one I'm going to show you, but I did it on audio and it was a reread, so I'm going with the longest physical book I read, which is Fearless by Lauren Roberts. This big boy is 593 pages, and we did it. We got through it. This is the last book of the Powerless trilogy, which I personally love. Again, one of my favorite book couples, Kai and Peyton, living rent-free in my brain. But this book specifically was okay. I think I rated it 3.5 stars. Shortest book I read, again, not counting audiobooks because I listened to a ton of really short novellas, like the Amazon original novellas that they release. But I read The Fall Risk by Abby Jimenez on my Kindle, and I think it was like 81 pages. So very, very short and quick, but it was actually cute. I liked it. Next is a book with a unique concept, and I bought this book simply because I thought the premise was so unique. It is Not Quite Dead Yet by Holly Jackson. This is about a girl named Jet who is given a limited number of days to live, about a week after she's attacked, and sets out to solve her own murder, which is just absolutely fascinating. Next is a book you would reread. And the reason I would reread this one is because I didn't rate it very highly when I read it. However, the movie is coming out, and the little sneak peeks and snippets we've gotten from the movie have me so excited. It is The Love Hypothesis by Ali Hazelwood. I truly do feel like if I reread this one, I might rate it higher. Ratings can change sometimes, you know, so that might be the case with this because, again, I am just like very hyped up for the movie, so why wouldn't I enjoy the book more? It might have just been read at the wrong time. We'll see. Next is a book that helped you out of a reading slump, and luckily I really didn't fall into a deep reading slump this year, but this book did just like ignite something in me. It is Problematic Summer Romance by Ali Hazelwood. I was not expecting to love this as much as I did because it is an age gap romance. However, I fell in love. It was executed so well. The writing was fantastic. I annotated it a lot. I heard a song that reminded me of these book characters while I was reading this book, and I was literally like skipping around my house listening to the song, dancing. It was wild. I think I also read this in like a few days, or at least within a week, which is very good for me. I'm a slow reader, and that is quick. Book you wish you had gotten to. For me, it's Heated Rivalry by Rachel Reed. I don't even have a physical copy, but it's simply because the hype around this show is insane, and I'm getting FOMO because I want to read the book before I watch the show, but I have not gotten to the book yet, so that has to be my answer. Book you started but did not finish before the end of the year, which is Bury Our Bones in the Midnight Soil by V.E. Schwab. Listen, I don't want to talk about it because I started this book in October of 2025, and we are currently on January 5th, 2026, and I've still not finished, okay? But listen, I think it's really just because I haven't had as much time as I would like to sit down and read for longer periods of time. This is the type of book where I want to set the ambiance, I want to burn a candle, I want to have a nice little fun drink next to me and cozy up and read it at home, and I haven't been able to do that as much as I would like to do that. So I will be finishing it very soon. Next are a few honorable mentions that I rated higher than 4 stars, but that didn't really fit into any of these other categories, so I do want to mention them. The first is Wild Dark Shore by Charlotte McConaughey, and this one is a very atmospheric fiction book with a unique plot as well. It's about a family who lives on this remote island near Antarctica and kind of has some very questionable conditions. It's like a harsh environment to be living in, but they live there, and there is a lot of like mystery elements to it because you're trying to figure out why they're on this island, what they're doing there, and one day this woman washes up on the shore. So that's also part of the mystery, is them trying to figure out who she is and why she's there. So this was very good and like surprisingly hit me in the feels at the end. I did end up crying by the end of it. So I rated this one 4.25 stars. Next we have Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow by Gabrielle Zevin. This is actually the first book I finished in 2025 and rated it 4.5 stars. It is another fiction book, and it's about a trio of friends who collaborate on creating a video game that really takes off, but you follow them throughout them meeting and becoming friends, making this video game, and everything that comes after. It is such a great coming of age story. I loved the message of quality over quantity when it comes to friendship, and I also found it to just be really impactful in the way that it makes you think. Like some of the quotes in here I think are ones that everybody could relate to or like apply to their own life. This was also just so nostalgic. If you grew up like in the 90s and you played video games or were around people who played video games, it will take you back. And last but not least, we have a memoir actually, which is From Here to the Great Unknown by Lisa Marie Presley and Riley Keough. I listened to the audiobook for this one, and I actually ended up going to Memphis, to Graceland, where Elvis lived, and bought this book from there. I just felt like that was such a perfect little souvenir to bring back with me. But the audiobook was so good, dual narration. It made the storytelling so authentic, and I just found it to be really sad. You hear about a lot of the hardships that they went through, but it was told in a way that was made to help other people, and that part really resonated with me. I'm going to close this out by going through my 2026 reading goals. That is the final question, and I have several, so I will go through my list with you all. The first, quantity wise, I want to read 50 books this year. The past couple of years I've set it at 48, and I have either reached or exceeded it. This past year, 2025, I read 61, so I feel like 50 is obtainable, but it's not too unrealistic either, so I think I can definitely do it. The next is to start using Fable, which I already did. I started on January 1st just because I want my stats to be tracked all year long. So I've always used Storygraph, which I still am using, but I want to use Fable on top of it because I've seen so many book girlies using Fable. I love the features, the visuals, the stats that I've seen on there. So I am gonna just go ahead and use both. Why not? The more the merrier. Next is to read the books I already own. And as I say this, I'm looking at my TBR cart with just stacks and stacks of books. It's a little out of hand at the moment, so I need to read the books I already own, and my motivation for doing that is buying more books after I get rid of the ones I already have on my TBR cart. The next is to read more book series back to back. I have this horrible habit of starting a book series and then reading a bunch of books in between that and the second book in the series or the next book of the series, and I just need to read them consecutively because I am forgetting everything that happened in the books I already read, and then that might make me need to reread. So my goal is to do that and also just like finish the series that I'm already in the middle of because there's quite a few of those. And my final goal for 2026 is to buy more books just simply based on the synopsis and that being interesting to me rather than book talk recommendations. Here's the thing, book talk recommendations are very hit or miss. You either love them or you hate them, and I really just want like the authentic experience before TikTok even existed of just going to the bookstore, picking up a book and reading that synopsis and thinking, I would really like this, and buying the book. That's what I want to do. Of course, I'll have to wait until I get through some of my TBR that I already own, but once I eventually do go book shopping, I would love to do it that way with like no bias. I had so much fun just yapping about books today, so I hope you did too, and I hope that you'll stay for more content to come. I will see you all in the next video.